Hey everybody, welcome to Connecting Cannabis, brought to you by Wrazel. I'm your host, Brian Haller. Today our special guest is CEO of Apothecary Brands, Whitney Beatty. She'll be here to talk to us about her incredible company, her amazing journey, and just a lot of great tidbits and tips for all of our audience. But first, of course, I'd love to hear a word from our sponsor. Ojai Energetics has the most advanced water-soluble CBD on the market. Its fast-acting, most viable products are made without synthetics. Most users feel the benefits with proper dosage in under 30 seconds, not 30 minutes like a regular CBD rich oil. Their products are created using organic ingredients and regenerative farming practices benefiting both people and the planet. Ojai Energetics provides CBD users with a dependable bridge to optimal living, promoting everyday health and well-being. To see their products, visit ohienergetics.com. And to learn more about their current investment opportunity, visit their profile in the Wrazel investment marketplace at wrazel.com. Welcome back to Connecting Cannabis, brought to you by Wrazel. Always good to see you. Let us bring in our guest, Whitney Beatty. Whitney, how are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you today?
I'm doing fine. Thank you so much for joining me on this very interestingly dreary day here in Southern California.
Thank you for having me. It is a little bit depressing outside, but it's Friday and it's always a good day to be in this business.
Absolutely. And speaking of which, let's hop right on in. Apothecary Brands. So tell us kind of the Cliff Notes version of what is Apothecary Brands?
Cliff Notes is, people keep wine in wine fridges, you keep liquor in bars, you keep cigars in humidors, but most people keep their high-end cannabis in a shoebox under their beds. And that just did not make sense to me. And so Apothecary designs sleek and sexy storage and humidity solutions for cannabis connoisseurs.
That is excellent and a very good, basically elevator pitch. So there you go. Well done. So I'm going to guess this isn't your first rodeo. So there you go.
I talk about a
lot. Exactly. So, and so of course, in order to start a brand like that, you have to have some sort of passion for cannabis, obviously, especially since your brand is so focused on the experience for the consumer, right? How did kind of your, passion for cannabis emerge?
That's a odd story, actually, because my background was actually that I did not use cannabis when I was growing up. I grew up in the 80s, and Nancy Reagan told me to say no to drugs, and I believed her. I had no idea. I had two parents who were attorneys, and I just was not something that I used in high school, really. I tried it a couple of times in college. But what really changed for me is I came out to Los Angeles and I was working in the entertainment industry. And if anyone has any experience in that space, it is a very stressful environment. And I was working long days and swing shifts and it really worked myself to the thread. And I was sitting at my desk and I started feeling heart palpitations and I couldn't breathe and my arms were weak. And because I did not want to disturb production, I got up and I drove from my office to the UCLA Medical Center. I parked my car where the ambulance is parked and left it there because, hey, I'm dying and really, do I need the car?
I shouldn't laugh at that, but that was funny.
True. Oh, and I was so dramatic. I sent I'm about to die text out. It was a whole thing. And after they did the EKGs and everything, they came in and they're like, you're not having a heart attack. And I'm like, the hell I'm not. And they're like, you're having an anxiety attack. Yep. And it changed my life instantly because then, it was about how am I going to get through this and how are we going to solve this? And they started putting me on medications and I didn't like any of them. And finally, in an offhand comment, my doctor was like, well, have you looked at cannabis? And I was like, oh, what? You're trying to put me on the drugs. And really kind of freaked me out. But what it did is it made me do my research and it made me do my homework. And I learned not only about the plant, but why I had negative connotations about the plant. Why was I feeling the way that I was? And I became a big proponent of the plant. And ultimately, I realized as a mother, as someone who had pets and kid, I wanted to change the way in which I was keeping the plant in my house. I was that person who had their, cannabis in a Nike box. And then, people came over, I'd offer them lovely things from the bar or smoke, cannabis from this box and this plastic bag. It just felt compromised. Not to mention the fact that I'm spending good money on this stuff and I come back and it's crisp and sad. How can we fix this? And I looked around and I didn't see anybody who was making what I wanted. And at the same time, I wanted to make a product that was for the people that I knew who are using the plant. And so I wanted to have the aesthetics that they wanted and the features that they wanted. And so I decided to sit down and make it. And once I did, I was like, let me go out and see if I'm the only one. And hopefully 5 years later, I found out that I am not.
Yes, but you are kind of on the, you're on the front lines of the people who are kind of trying to do this. And, it makes a lot of sense. Like, I loved your analogy about, hey, you'd have a liquor bar, or you'd have you have quality kind of ways to display your food and, other, high profile items. You're spending much more on cannabis than you probably are on, alcohol and things like that. Why are we using plastic baggies and, ripped up papers and, shoe boxes?
Absolutely.
Right?
It feels compromised. That it gives you a different feeling when you're doing something in a mindful way and you're doing something in a beautiful way than when you're scrounging around in a, dirty box trying to find things. It just, it elevates the situation.
Well, it's a fantastic metaphor, in my opinion, for basically demystifying, this kind of negative propaganda, quite frankly, around cannabis, right? It's all about normalizing it, which will combat the propaganda, essentially, right? And a way to normalize things is we're going to make high-profile ways to house your edibles, your smoke, your tools, your everything. Because wouldn't you do that?
Absolutely.
Right? And I like that because I can understand that being a good business model, and then of course speaking about your history and getting diagnosed with anxiety, that is a fairly common story when it comes to cannabis. I know for a fact that it helps with anxiety. I've seen it happen too many times. I've even used it myself when I've been to the point where it's been anxious, and I have been diagnosed by a doctor with it. So I, like you, had virtually the same experience. First time I had one, I was teaching, and it felt like I was going to have a heart attack.
It does.
I had to come get rescued by my vice principal. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's over. It's done. It's a wrap. And that's what it feels like. So for anybody who hasn't actually had an anxiety attack, that's what it feels like. It feels just like a heart attack. You feel like you're losing it.
Yep.
And you're going to, go. And basically you get the deep breaths and it keeps magnifying. Anyhow, the point is that, it's a very common entry to cannabis. And hearing that story, I think, helps a lot of our audience because, it's not just that. You were also inspired to, create this. Around, how long has Apothecary been around?
We started in 2015. So this is coming up on 5 years.
That is very interesting. That's a ton of time in the cannabis space.
It's like 30 years in cannabis.
That's right. And surely you've had 30 years of experience in that 5 years. I can almost guarantee that. What has that been?
It's been a wild ride.
What was it like? Can you give us a little bit of insight of how it was when you started versus how it is now?
I mean, I think it's much different now than it was when I started. I transferred into this area from the entertainment industry. I was a SVP of development. I was developing shows, and I took that brand knowledge and demographic knowledge and brought it into this space and into this company. And it was funny because one of the first hurdles that I ran up against, and trust me, as an entrepreneur, you always hit hurdles. As one in cannabis, they're just all over. But one of the first hurdles was a lot of people telling me that there was not a high-end brand or a luxury space within the cannabis space. That cannabis was cannabis and it was general, and that there was not now, nor would there ever be a space for luxury goods. Was
that more when you first started that you were hearing that sort of
2015, 2016.
That makes sense, I guess, then. Now I'd be shocked if somebody told you that.
Exactly. I mean, and look at how quickly that market has changed. Precisely. I mean, I've gotten, written, emails from investors who told me that I was nuts. And it really took for me to be able to go out and, do those initial sales and be able to show that traction, to come back and say, no, that this market exists. And now, 5 years down, it's no one can believe that, that anyone would even say that with the way that the market has, shaped up. But at that point in time, I really believed, and I still do, that very much like the liquor market, There's a space for a plastic bottle of Pop Off, just like there's a space for a bottle of Kettle One or a bottle of Grey Goose. That was going to be how this industry ended up breaking out. And it is. I mean, there's, you can keep your cannabis in a plastic bag or in a mason jar or an apothecary case. There, this depends on who you are and what your demo, is and what you want.
Sure. That makes a lot of sense. It's interesting because there's also the added like medicinal benefits of cannabis too that make it even more. There's like more niches available to you in cannabis than even in my opinion, an average industry or just in many, even a commodity-based industry. There's more kind of niches for you to carve out. And even you can diversify your own brand.
That part, absolutely. I agree.
Yeah. And so I think that's funny to hear kind of how far things have come. So that was one of the first kind of hurdles, that you recall facing. Obviously you are a woman and you're a woman of color. So were there, and that's few and far between in terms of being a CEO of a company in cannabis. Had you experienced any hurdles with regards to that?
I mean, I think that, obviously, I mean, I've been a Black woman all my life. It's been a constant. So, some of the things that, I was used to, but I think that one of the things where it sticks out for me a lot is in fundraising. In the cannabis space, I can't go down to the bank and get a bank loan. They're not giving out that sort of funding to businesses within the space. And so we're, at the place where we need to be able to fundraise from angel investors or from VCs, and those are the main tracks. Well, for people of color, the numbers have shown that within our circles, we don't have as much access to that capital from within our communities. So that means we're going out and we're pitching to the people who are normally angel investors. Angel investors by demographic are generally older white men. And traditionally, they would invest in people that reminded them of themselves.
Yep.
And most people don't see themselves as a Black female single mother. I don't know why.
That's interesting.
See yourself in me. But
I don't know. It's funny though, Whitney. You're being funny, but there is some truth to that.
Oh, it's absolutely. And I say it in a light-hand way, but it's absolutely the truth. And so that is a hurdle that I had to cross over. I need these people to be able to relate to me on a real level, because in a very real way, people invest in the person, not necessarily the project. They have to believe that I'm able to do this and that I'm the only person who can get this job done. So I have to be able to cross all those barriers that are just, I'm not one of your good old boys. And I also have to make them believe that this is a project worth investing in. And so I had to come harder than, a normal person might have to. I need to make sure I knew my numbers back and forth. I needed to make sure that I was relatable. And it's hard. And, but at the same time, was I able to do it? Absolutely. But it just makes it more difficult for businesses owned by people of color and, women of color to go forward. On the other side, you've got VCs. VCs have given 2% of funding over the last 5 years to women-led companies. And when you're looking at women of color, you're talking 0.006% of VC dollars going to companies led by Black women. Those numbers are abysmal. And especially in a space where it's showing that across the board, female and Black-led, businesses are doing well. We're, doing a lot of business starting, and our businesses tend to be more successful. The average Black female who's raising money for a business raised $35,000. That's not enough to compete. And it's definitely not enough to compete in the cannabis space.
Medicus LP was created after their team discovered that very few avenues existed for investment in professionally managed public equity funds. As a result, they created a long bias limited partnership, Medicus, for accredited individuals and organizations that will invest in public exchange-traded companies in the cannabis space. Investor net asset values are calculated on a monthly basis by their administrator, Klein Fund Services, and audited annually by Spicer Jeffries. This provides full transparency for investors. Their prime broker is BTIG and custodian is Pershing. Medicus started investing in January 2020. To learn more about Medicus, please visit their website at medicuslp.com. And for more information about their current investment opportunity, please visit the Wrazel investment marketplace at wrazel.com.
We have to do better.
Yes, and I think everybody has to do better. I think everybody involved has to. And, at Wrazel, we definitely put a premium on trying to work with as many different types of people as possible to make sure that their businesses have as much audience as anybody can, and that we tidy up them, for what investors are looking for, right? But what you say is also very true. Not only do you have, it's hard enough to get money, period. Just period, right?
It is.
But if you already have these kind of preconceived notions or this other kind of barrier that you have to kind of fight through, it's even harder for people in your position. And it doesn't have to be that way. And in fact, as we move forward, there are programs that are at least beginning to address some of this. One of which you're actually actively very involved in, your businesses, excuse me. It's the social equity program. Explain a little bit more about that, if you could.
So apart from Apothecary, I'm also a social equity applicant in Los Angeles. Social equity programs seek to basically mitigate some of the harms from the war on drugs on communities of color. I guess the short story is community of color have been disproportionately disenfranchised by the war on drugs across the board. And now in legalization, we have not had an opportunity to really participate in this new industry. And so these programs have been popping up on a city, municipal level, and on a state level in order to help even that playing field and allow people of color to participate in this industry on the license side. So social equity programs only, apply to those licenses. So in a city like Los Angeles, right now they have a social equity program which allows for prioritization for people who have lived in certain zip codes, who have certain incomes, who have been personally affected by the war on drugs, and it allows those people to apply for licenses in a different way with prioritization. The law in Los Angeles actually says that for every regular license, they have to have 2 licenses that go to people who are members of the social equity program.
See, very interesting. And, I think it's a little, step by step, little things like this. And, they're definitely going to help. And I'm really glad to hear that. How far along are you in that process?
For the Los Angeles process, it's going to be a while, but we have applied, we have paid an invoice, and so we are waiting for temporary licensing in Los Angeles.
Okay. And yeah, to your point, it's all of us kind of having to do all the things that we can do in our power to make sure that people are treated fairly, that everybody kind of gets a fair shake, that everybody gets a fair opportunity. If a business model is bad, we'll call a business model bad, no problem. And we don't care who it is. We're going to have to be honest with each other, right? But on the other hand, if there's a lot of good opportunities here, you got to make sure that your own kind of personal biases or your personal kind of background doesn't fog it up a little bit, that it doesn't make you interfere with, what's just right to do.
Absolutely. It's about, being able to challenge implicit and explicit biases that people might have and also look at the opportunity at the end of the day.
Yes.
The opportunity is real. If the person has the skill set to get the job done, I think that there was a study that was done last year looking at VCs and, their tendency to keep investing in the same people and the amount of money that they've missed out on by not looking at, women-led companies, not looking at minority-led companies. And the amount of losses was in the billions because, people are just missing out on those opportunities. Yeah. So it becomes important. And the other part of this is, we are building an industry based on a space that has really done a load of damage in regards to the war on drugs. We've got communities that have still not, don't look the same. We've got people who are still in jail on, marijuana offenses, even in the midst of a COVID crisis. So it's important, for me, at least, to make sure that I acknowledge that that's the back that we're building this industry on, and to do as much as possible to, right those wrongs and to encourage the cities to make sure that they take that into account as they're bringing on legislation.
Absolutely. And, I could talk to you about this for a long time. And in fact, I would love to have you on and continue to kind of continue this discussion at another time. So hopefully you'll be open to doing that, because it's been a pleasure having you on today. And I'm always very excited to talk to you. Before we get out of here, let's make sure everybody knows where they can find Apothecary Brands out there.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. Check us out on our website. It's theapothecarycase.com. That's the APOTHECARRY case.com. You can also find us on Facebook and on Instagram as the Apothecary.
Excellent. And of course you can find them not only on Wrazel, but you'll, if you're watching this, you can look down in the comments or in the description, and you'll find Whitney's site as well. Whitney, thank you so much for being on Connecting Cannabis with me today. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to doing it again soon.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
You too. Take care.